Howdy MJ friends, checking in on the market, and I must admit I just woke up from a 3-hour nap. All kinds of disoriented, but I usually don't trade the Friday afternoon session. I stop at around noon because the odds are not in my favor Friday afternoon as things slow down and the opportunities are fewer and far between. So I just skip that space so I don't try and do anything silly. So I'm going to get working on that AMA video this weekend. I have a goal of putting it out this weekend, so I appreciate all those questions. Still reading through them. There were about 300 of them total, which is way more than I anticipated, but that'll be fun. Let's do the Canadian MJ names. We'll do the US MJ names in tomorrow's video. We're going to look at the Big Five, the Tier 2, 3, VFF, T-God, Fire, N, CXXI, and PYX to wrap it up. And we have pullback starting on the major names. So we got CGC and Cron. We're watching these daily equilibriums. We're looking for them to break sometime next week, most likely. And the question now is this our lower high being set compared to 49.86? I need one more pullback day tomorrow, or Monday I should say, in order for me to be convinced and say, yes, that is our lower high being set. I look at the hourly time frame for clues. We have lost the hourly uptrend. That's another increased indication that that lower high has been set. If that is the case, there's a couple ways this is going to play out. We're going to pull back and form a higher low and then see a bull break next week, heading back up to 51.81. Or we're going to pull back, break support without setting a higher low and break 42.91, or pull back, set a higher low, and get real tight into the end of the week. So we know a break is going to be imminent. We know it's going to be pretty clear when it happens. We need to ensure that there's solid volume and follow through behind it for us to believe that move. But right now it's looking like 48.40 might be that lower high. Cron is not as convincing. It's still a little red day, but we're going to have to see follow through in a break of 21.51 on Monday in order for us to believe that our lower high has been set. So if that lower high of 22.27 is set, we're going to look to pull back and form a higher low compared to 19.50. The way to play these equilibriums, again, I like to get to a certain point and then just wait for the break, but there's still potentially one more bullish entry where you're looking for that last higher low. If we do pull back, break the lows of today on Monday, then we're watching for the higher low comparative to the previous level. So if Cron were to drop down into the 2050s, it would be perhaps a dollar risk before getting stopped out to the downside. And the hope and the reward would be that that's the higher low, maybe scaling in. And then we see the bull break up over 22.27 and we look back up towards the all-time high. So have to take it one day at a time to see if we like that setup. Look at the volume just consistently drop off. It's going to be very clear when we get that volume spike with the clear break. So there is potentially enough space for me to like one more entry in Cron as we tighten up in this pattern. But again, we're going to have to take that one day at a time. ACB on the daily chart, solid pullback. Saw the inside bar broke bearish, 747, 745, two lows of the last 2 days, pulling back. Must form a higher low compared to 689. And at this point on the weekly time frame, watching to see if that's a weekly lower high being set. Still like the clarity on the daily chart better. It's just in order for the bears to take over here, we're going to have to set the higher low, see the bounce attempt, fail to break 784, and then roll over and lose the daily higher low pattern. That will clearly shift momentum and have us looking back down at the recent low in the 660s. Let's look at the hourly RSI. Not close to oversold just yet, but we'll be watching for that to line up just like Cron and CGC. Hourly RSI oversold into daily support. Let's see if ACB gives us that next week. If we see a red day on Monday, hourly RSI will be oversold as we're heading towards 689 key support. APHA, after the double top, unable to get follow through. That's the range that we're watching on APHA. We've been within it for the last 7 days in a row. There's a double top at 1059 and 1056, and now the bulls must hold 961 on this pullback. So there's tightening ranges everywhere to be watching, and we're not looking at the same kind of hourly oversold setup on APHA as we are on ACB. So it's nice that these individual names have individual setups in terms of which is most comfortable for us to be playing. S&P 500 was just fine today. We pulled back and consolidated all day, but, well, actually not all day, the first half, and then we just bounced the all rest of the day and closed up near the high. So bulls were just fine in the S&P 500, and we're seeing this little pullback in the major MJ names on their own accord. TLRY couldn't break resistance, rejected first thing. So 83.10 was resistance. 82.78, the high of yesterday, broke that by 3 pennies and then pulled back the rest of the day. So bearish entries when you see the inability to break resistance and then you pull back. Let's see what it looked like to start the day. And it was just an instant attempt, instant failure, and it's actually a triple top there. And then it was just all bears all day. So that was a nice bearish play. The weekly time frame is in an equilibrium. We're looking for a lower high compared to 89.88. And now we're looking on the daily chart back at the higher low of 76.60. Bulls need to hold 76.60 to hold that higher low. So all 5 major names heading into Monday, we're looking for momentum facing the downside for the bears. We're approaching supports. We're looking to see, can the bulls keep their daily higher low patterns and stay in tightening ranges? And we're going to get that answer Monday, Tuesday, early next week. OGI, very tight. So this is absolutely another one to be watching next week. We closed pretty strong. Want to see the... Actually, I'm thinking of the wrong ticker, so take that back. But you can see the volume is dropping off as we're getting tighter and tighter. Hourly equilibrium, very clear. High, all-time high, low of the pullback, lower high. We'll call that the higher low. 866 is a resistance level as well. We're right there. 866, 873, 887. Those are the 3 resistance levels, and we're right up at resistance. We're going to test that. Looks like Monday first thing. So as opposed to testing support, here OGI is testing resistance. And if we pull back on the hourly, anything above 838 keeps the higher lows. So if we get the bull break, all-time highs are going to be right there. And we need to see the volume spike associated with that break to try and get follow-through up over $9 ideally if we're going to get some meaningful follow-through, and need to take a page out of VFF's book in terms of getting all-time high follow-through, which we'll look at in just a second. HEXO, this is not the kind of follow-through that you want to see when your daily higher low is established. This right now is a potential bear flag after the size of the pullback that we saw. You want to see multiple green days. You want to see increasing bull volume to be looking healthy, and that's not it right now. So we have to be cautious, because if we break 723 from here, we lose the daily uptrend. So that is a very key level. We have not lost the daily uptrend in quite some time, pretty much since the December lows. So we do have to be cautious here. And if that level does break of 723, we're looking down at 708 and then 658. So hourly uptrend is key here. Bulls are still clinging on. 745 is the most important support level for me on the hourly chart. Let's make sure I got the Canadian ticker up. And I do. So if we break 745 early next week, the odds that this is a daily bear flag will increase, and we'll be looking down at 723. TRST, nice bull break after getting very tight. That bull break happened in the second half of trading today. And you can see the 15-minute time frame was a real nice equilibrium. So we had the high of 1220, the low, double top, higher low, and then bull break on volume, breaking 1220, and then a tightening 15-minute pattern into the end of the day. So broke our tight inside bars bullish, and now on the hourly time frame, probably not going to head straight up to 1320 key resistance. We will need to see hourly higher lows and higher highs to make it up to that range, in my opinion. And we haven't consolidated on the hourly since 1190. But nice job of these bulls holding these support levels and then finally grinding that bull break to give some momentum for the bulls into the end of the week. So very clearly, bearish momentum out of the major names, and 2 out of the 3 of the tier 2 names ended the week with bullish momentum. Big difference between that. So I just got the updated scoop on VFF. It looks like it's halted on the NASDAQ side of things, and that's usually not the case. It's usually halted on the Canadian side of things, and the US keeps trading in terms of what we've seen with tickers in the fairly recent past. But in this instance, NASDAQ has halted it. This does not look news related. It looks like NASDAQ needs more information. So don't want to speculate as to what's going on, but I could assume that the VFF bulls have gathered a lot of hype and attention with the massive run that they've seen, and the NASDAQ is looking at it and saying, okay, we need more information in terms of perhaps what are you doing with the cannabis plant, things like that. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But Canada, this is when we got the news that the NASDAQ halted, and then Canada obviously dumped the 20 minutes after that, anticipating that it's going to potentially be bad news. So we'll look for when we're going to get unhalted in the US side of things. But as of right now, it is going to cause some fear and uncertainty, and we'll have to see how this ends up playing out. But it is going to affect the Canadian ticker as well, depending on what that news is. If they were delisted from the NASDAQ. That's probably worst case scenario, that they get delisted for some kind of reason, and that would cause a lot of, well, we would probably see people eventually get their shares converted back to an OTC ticker. I'm not sure. I'm not going to speculate. We'll keep an eye on it and check day after day. And best case scenario, and it doesn't do anything, and the bulls end up buying the dip back up. But at this point, I would expect there's going to be at least a little bit of some kind of negative repercussions. VFF, news on the gap up open, blue sky confirmation, or I should say bull flag confirmation into the blue sky. You have to be cautious of the volume climax up here and the bearish reversal candlestick. So we go into the hourly, and we can see the hourly uptrend is still intact. But the bulls are not happy with how much they've given back here. So the low is 1476, the high is 1625, and here we are trying to form a higher low to hold that support level and to prevent from the gap fill on the daily time frame. And if we can hold that 1476 support on Monday morning, we're going to look for a bounce and a potential hourly lower high compared to 1625 and a tightening range. If we do see the bear break, again, gap to fill back down towards 1407. T-God on the daily, perfect follow through. Inside bar bull break, volume there to convincingly back it up, break of 432. Weekly trend change confirmation. Higher low on a little bull flag, and then higher highs breaking through 432 resistance. Next is 498, bulls in full control. So, daily higher low is 364. Anything above that keeps the bulls in control. Hourly chart, very overextended. RSI is above 80, so we know the next time we consolidate on the hourly time frame, a higher low is going to form, and we'll see if the bulls can keep this hourly uptrend into early next week. So another name with bullish momentum added to TRST and OGI. FIRE, daily inside bar of consolidation after the strong day yesterday, so unable to get follow through first thing. Can't break 211, we reject by 3 pennies, and then we pull back down to 199. So it's essentially almost 5% of profit taking, 4.5% of profit taking as soon as we have the inability to see continuation. So the key support is now 199. If that level breaks, it's 195, and resistance is 204, 208, and 211. So looking back at the daily time frame, we had the nice shift in momentum, now a sideways inside bar, and bulls want to break that early next week to try and get some follow through on this weekly chart. But remember, the longer term weekly most likely scenario is that we're going to form a lower high compared to 236. So we always have to be cautious and say, is this our weekly lower high compared to 236? And how this inside bar breaks on Monday will help us answer that question. N is weak. We close at the low of the day. Support is $1, 98, and 90. So it looks like we're going to test $1 first thing on Monday, and we have been unable to gain any kind of bullish momentum over the last 7 days. So we are in an equilibrium still, but this equilibrium will break bearish if 98 breaks. So bulls really need to hold that level. If we can hold 98 and start to shift the hourly momentum, we'll look for a daily lower high compared to 116, and we'll stay in this tightening range, but we have to hold 98. CXXI, holding pretty strong. We have daily higher lows of 140, and then another one at 154, and you can see we're getting a little toppy. 172 was a double top. So if we double top and then break support of 154, we're going to see weekly consolidation take place. And weekly consolidation is a bit overdue. We're extended. We're hitting these resistances back from September in the 170s, and it's all about the daily uptrend. Have to hold that level. If we do, the bulls are holding on, and we'll keep watching the double top of resistance. But again, if we break 154, daily uptrend is lost, and we zoom out to the weekly to look for a weekly higher low to form. PYX, also worth watching, trading sideways. Daily higher low is 23.77. Anything above that keeps the higher lows intact, and resistance is 29.12. So sideways trading, volume extremely low, and we need that continuation move. We don't have a daily higher low established here yet, so even if we break down towards 23.77, it's still a daily uptrend overall, but this is another extended weekly time frame, so we know to be cautious because when the daily uptrend is lost, weekly consolidation for the higher low will be underway, and that is going to be potentially tested this coming week. Again, when you see volume drop off like this in this pattern, you note the day when you say, oh, we already have 50% of the previous day's volume in the first half hour of trading. We know it's going to be a high volume day that's going to break this declining volume pattern, and we have to make note of which direction that break is occurring. And in this instance, we can get even tighter on the hourly time frame. Key resistance 2783, key support 2610 and 2606. And you can just see these clear hourly lower highs over the past couple days. So some nice setups in terms of bear setups, bull setups, and it's all about the equilibriums. We can clearly see that names are able to do their own thing, like these stronger names that we highlighted, even though we saw consolidation in the major names today. But if we see bear breaks of these tightening patterns in CGC and Cron, and not just a 1 or 2% kind of pullback day, but a 5% pullback kind of day, I think if it gets to that point, then everybody will be affected. But some names are going to be positioned a lot better to absorb that consolidation than others. So it's nice to have a nice variety pack in terms of the way this sector is shaping up. So we'll see what the U.S. sector looks like compared to the Canadian MJ sector. I do anticipate the U.S. sector will probably be affected by the direction in which we break these equilibriums as well. We'll wrap it up here with story time. I'm going to kick it off with a road trip that I went on. And just to set the stage before we get into it, let's see. At this point in time, I started off with my road tripping career when I was in college, and I watched the movie, oh man, what's it called? Into the Wild. So I watched Into the Wild, and as soon as I saw it, I said, all right, we're going to Yellowstone. I'm trying to adventure. And so with my college buddies, we drove to Yellowstone 36 hours straight to the Badlands in South Dakota and then to the Yellowstone. And we went out into the bush for 10 days backcountry camping. We had no idea what we were doing in terms of supplies to bring. And we were starved without food out in the backcountry. It was a huge learning experience. And we had such insufficient gear. It was comical looking back upon it. But we were pretty miserable and hungry, sustaining ourselves with ramen noodles after hiking 10 miles a day for 100 miles. So that was fun. After that, I went on a road trip with my buddies after graduating college. I took 2 of them, and we were going around the country to all the national parks. Found out about 2 weeks before the trip that neither of them had ever been camping. So I was pretty much the leader of that excursion and did all the planning and all the driving, and we took my Honda Civic out there. And after that, I had a great experience with them. It was a ton of fun. But there were a lot of times where I was sitting there saying, man, I wish I were by myself, because I would wake up early. I'd be up with the sun and they'd sleep 2 or 3 hours after that. So I'd have to just be bumming around the campsite waiting for them, when in reality, I wanted to be up and going and on with my day. So definitely appreciated the camaraderie and company and fun that we had. But I wanted to do my own. So I set out on my own many-month road trip around the country in my Honda Civic, living out of my car. And I was also doing it on a budget. So I'm a minimalist at heart my whole life. I always have been conservative with money, conservative with resources. And so I had a game plan of, I'm just going to try and live out of my car and do this adventure with as much money as I'd be spending on rent. And I had saved up at that point in my trading career. I had success in the U.S. marijuana penny stock market, and I had saved up enough, maybe $20,000, that I was comfortable to know that I could, travel around for a year and figure some things out and have some fun before I looked at the job world and looked at, making money. And at that point, I didn't think I was going to be a full-time trader my whole life. I hadn't gotten to that point. I had some successful swing trading, and I traded a little bit while I was on my road trip by myself. Not a whole lot, but just some swing trades. There would be times where I wouldn't have internet for a whole week, so I would do some swing trading. And there were times where I would be, put in one place for a couple weeks visiting a friend or something, and that would allow me to do some trading as well. But overall, I was slowing way down on trading and just looking to do some adventuring. So started it off in, that's what my life was. That was everything that I owned that I would put in my car, and had all the essentials. I had a big tent that I grew up with. This was like a 6-person party tent. I had a 4-person tent that I would bust out when I was camping out of my car. And then I had a 1-person tent that was really light for when I was backcountry camping. I had all my rain gear, and this was my sleeping mat, which, part of being a minimalist, I made tons of mistakes in terms of, skimping on my gear. This army pad is like $8. It's this thick. You might as well be sleeping on the ground. It did nothing. And I said, all right, now I need to buy $100 sleeping mat after this experience, because I was just miserable and it wasn't worth it. There are some things that money is worth being spent on, and a sleeping mat is definitely one of them. So that was another lesson that I learned. So that was what I left with in my car. Didn't have much else room, and because the Honda Civic's very small, it was completely filled up. I started on the East Coast in North Carolina in the Smoky Mountains, pretty close to where I'm living right now, and that's why they call them the Smoky Mountains, because the elevation has the clouds rolling right through them, and it's an awesome national park. And I got to learn a lot about these national parks in terms of their, rules and regulations. Some of them, like Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, is extremely friendly to campers. You get a permit and it pretty much says, don't camp within 100 feet of a road, 100 feet of a trail. And other than that, you can go wherever you want and sleep wherever you want. And I like that because there's so many times where I'm hiking and I'm just walking by a spot and I'm like, oh, that's the spot. I want to camp there. And oftentimes, it's not where your permit designates that you're supposed to go or things like that. So in Smoky Mountain, it's not the best camping. They have one designated campsite for developed camping, and it gets really crowded with a ton of people. And other than that, there's a lot of surrounding areas of national forests, and national forests are a lot more liberal with their rules, and you can pretty much pull off and backcountry camp wherever. There's very little regulation in that regard. So I generally would do that and then, go and hike inside the park, but not really camping in the park. But in this instance, I was. So night one of the road trip, setting off on this excursion, and I was heading out to my campsite a little bit late in the afternoon and close to the evening, actually. I was in a bit of a hurry. So got into the trail, started hiking. I think I had maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles to get to my campsite. Got about a third of the way there, and it just started downpouring. And, I had some rain gear, but this is the kind of downpour that no matter what, everything's going to be soaked, and you're going to have to set up your tent, and your tent's going to be soaked, and your sleeping bag's going to be soaked. And so I just turned around and walked back to my car, took off all my clothes, got naked in my car, and just sat there for a while and started to have the doubts, what am I doing? Is this, what I'm about to do this for a couple months. Can I even do this? Just, all those negative thoughts that just started building, and certainly on the back of having my night number one completely ruined in terms of what I was planning on, and it being pretty much, one of the worst case scenarios of comfortability for that night. So with all that doubt, honestly, I took a hit of ganja and I put on some music, and I've never experienced a more significant, impactful 180-degree turnaround of emotions. Generally, fortunately, I don't really have those negative feelings. I have a very happy life that I'm very grateful for, but in this instance, it was just like, whoa, I can't wait. This is so exciting. Everything is perfect. I couldn't be happier. And that I will always remember for how notable the complete turnaround in mental state was with just those two little combinations. And I think it was either listening to Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix when it happened as well. Very notable. I wrote that down somewhere. I also took notes and dream journal. That's another thing. With the part of this trip that I was doing, a big goal I had was learning lucid dreaming. And I was already lucid dreaming at that point, but I just mean getting really good at it and reading about it. So I brought multiple books with me, and I was keeping dream journals, and I was adjusting my sleep schedule to wake up really early in the morning and then go do something and break up my sleep cycle and then go back to sleep for an hour or two. And that's when you have the best lucid dreams. And I actually just had a lucid dream when I was napping an hour ago before making this video. But that was a good start. So I camped in the Smoky Mountain National Park for a couple nights after regaining my composure. And I've gone there in the summer, in the winter, maybe 3 or 4 times total. And I've never gone there without seeing elk. So there's elk all over, and they're just hanging out. They're used to people, very accustomed to it. And some nice fungi. What a lot of people don't know is that in Western North Carolina, it's a temperate rainforest. So it's extremely lush. They get a lot of water that, supplements all these plants. And there's tons of plant life. I want to say there's some kind of statistic like the most diverse plant life in the continental United States. I might be making that up, but it's something along those lines in terms of the variety of plant life. And if you've been to Western North Carolina in the summer, it blows you away with how lush everything is. And it does seem like a jungle. So here are some fungi getting all up on a tree. And one of my favorite parts about road tripping is water. Drinking, fresh sources. And this is a really easy filter that you just scoop up the water and hang it. And within 5 minutes, you have a gallon filled up of fresh mountain creek water. And obviously, the closer to the source, the closer into the top of the mountains you get it, the better it's going to be in terms of cleanliness. But that was something that I really started to appreciate, just fresh, clean water directly from the source, and that helped me feel really connected. So this entire road trip, we're going to go through all the states and all the national parks, and I took a bunch of pictures, not much video, but this entire road trip, in my opinion, shaped a lot of my psychology and personal everything about me that makes me a good trader. So I do think there are contributions to that. A lot of comfortability being alone, and it's almost to the point now where I need space to be alone because I enjoy it so much. But that was definitely due to this road trip and so many months on the road being alone. And there were times where I would go a couple weeks without having any interaction with people aside from just in passing hellos. So let's see what else. Syncing up with the sun. So my entire rhythm changed with the sun, where I was waking up with the sun and going to sleep. If you're by yourself and it's nighttime and pitch black and you're out in the middle of the woods, there's not a whole lot to do. So I would generally go to sleep right as the sun was going down. So that would at times be, 8 o'clock, I'm asleep, and I'm awake at a little after 5:30, just as the sky starts changing colors to get sunrise. And I loved that schedule. It felt really on point. Aside and drinking water from the source and waking up with the sun, I felt very connected to the land, and with all the hikes that I ended up doing, it was a wonderful experience that I will continue to share with you all. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you in tomorrow's video, and we'll take it from there. Do good things. Have a great Friday night. Gonna go see some Empire Strikes Brass funk, New Orleans style.